How's it going, guys? A little bit of a late night stream. Just needed to build this and thought, what the hell, I'll stream it. It's a budget build, so we're looking at about $800 in parts if you shop around in today's terrible world. How's everybody's night going? Did I catch you in bed? Getting ready to snooze? Getting my gloves on and we'll get started. Probably going to go through this pretty quickly here. It's not going to take very long. There's not a lot to do here. We're also going to be using a unique case, or not so unique, but a new case from Musitex, which I haven't used yet before. This is the TW8, which is a ATX mid-tower, and it also includes some RGB fans. So I'm really curious to see the quality of this case. It's black. It'll be interesting. First time I've built in this case. They're micro ATX case, which are the MK7s. They turned out pretty good. So, curious to see what it does. Alright, I'm just going to get some of this out of the way so we can start building on the board. We're going to probably start with the RAM, the CPU on the motherboard. A little bit of a story on this motherboard. I had this motherboard about 3 months ago, or yeah, about 3 months ago. B450, got it for a budget build. Brand new, built with it, sound didn't work, so I had to RMA it back to Gigabyte, and they returned it to me in the same box but it was taped and sealed, so this tells me that they did something. But they sent it back in the same box without my mounting brackets. So, yeah, Gigabyte's RMA service, probably, I don't know, not the greatest. Let me know if you're hearing a lot of buzzing in the background, because I am breaking in a couple of machines back there, running it hard. So if you hear a lot, too much buzzing, I'll go fix it. So I'm going to need my mounting brackets. Thankfully, I have a few AM4 mounting brackets here, because Gigabyte decided to screw me there. Again, if you're just joining, it's not a new board, it's an RMA board, but they sent it back without the brackets. It's like, alright, cool. I appreciate you. But it's a B450. Definitely a budget build. So if you're looking to start building a gaming computer and your budget's around $800, this is about what you're going to get right now if you want to go AMD. It's tight. Video card took up more than a quarter of the budget itself, or a little more than a quarter of the budget. And that's a GTX 1060, 6GB. Which will play pretty much any game you ask it to right now still. So it's still pretty relevant. And then I was able to come across a second generation Ryzen 5 2400G. I'm sorry, 3400G. From a buddy who was selling it with a graphics card. And I couldn't pass it up because it was brand new. So, now it's going to the budget build. And we are going to be using the stock AMD fan. But I mean, this gives you quite a few options as well. So, if you want to build with a budget, maybe you don't have the money for a GPU right away, the 3400G is definitely the way to go. Or any of the Intel CPUs, i3, i5, with integrated graphics. You'll be able to play a couple of games here and there. Maybe not in the greatest resolution, but you can at least start until you save up for a graphics card. That's one way people do it these days. So it's always an option. But we're going to be putting a graphics card in this one. And I am going to use a stock thermal paste. Again, super tight budget. That is the idea of this build. So again, it's the Gigabyte B450 AMD 3400G. Your El Cheapo build. I can never get this plastic back into the box ever the same. It's always a challenge every time. When you build as many builds as I do, recycling and trash becomes a big problem. a logistical nightmare. So I try to just pack everything back up so it can be crushed and recycled. Now when you're installing one of these heat sinks, you're just going to be doing it diagonally, a couple twists on each screw to get started, so you can evenly apply the pressure to the CPU in the sockets. So you don't want to put it in all on an angle and then over tighten it, and you might bend the pins. So just go on an angle, little by little. Until they're snug. Alright. So let's get the RAM in here. This is 16 gigabytes DDR4. And this is 3000 megahertz. Which is 1.35 volts. And it's 2 sticks of 8 gig. So it's plenty of RAM for gaming. And the brand and the model from the brand is your budget RAM, but it still has a heat spreader, and it's still 3000 megahertz for AMD. So it's definitely going to do the job. More than enough. And you have you can get it pretty much on Amazon anytime. I've never had a problem getting it when I'm doing a budget build, so it's widely available. It runs about $75 or so right now for 16 gigabytes, 2 sticks. It's not a bad price, all things considered right now. RAM prices are going up. SSDs are going up. Motherboard prices are going up. Everything's going up. Alright, so we got our CPU, our heatsink mounted on the CPU socket, and our 2 sticks of RAM installed. We don't have an M.2 SSD for this build. We're going to be using a Team Group SATA SSD. This is 1 terabyte, so we're not going to be doing that now. We're going to be doing that after we get the board in the case. So I'm going to move this out of the way. Then we're going to pop that case open. Check that out. Okay. Packaging is pretty standard. You got styrofoam around the sides, the 2 styrofoam plates supporting it, keeping it from getting damaged while shipping, which is pretty standard. Got some styrofoam stuck to my gloves. Ugh. Buzz off, man. And then you got plastic. You got some plastic bag around the actual case. I like that on anything that's getting shipped, so it will help keep things from getting wet, especially if it sits outside for a minute. But yeah, the initial thought when I first look at it is short, so it's tall because it's a micro ATX. I'm sorry, it's a ATX mid tower, so it's tall. This is the top here, this side, and this is the bottom. Got your power supply shroud there, but it is short. So you can't put a very long graphics card in here, especially if you're going to install a radiator. And it does have radiator support. So definitely keep that in mind. It is short. Check the length of your card if you're going to ever build in this case. This one, just like the MK7, which I think is cool still. It has the door hinge. So it's got a hinge here and here, and your tempered glass is a door, and it will just lift off. So if you pick it up and lift it, it'll pull right off, which is kind of cool. I like it. I actually like that feature a lot. So we've got in this case 3 addressable RGB fans on the front, 2 on the top, 1 on the back. They're already installed. They have the fans the wires routed to the back, and it looks like it's correct for the most part. Don't like how these fans are routed here, but I don't see another hole to route those. So maybe we'll reroute those to this side to make it look cleaner, or the front. We'll see. But they're already routed, so that saves a ton of time when you build a ton of computers, like in a situation like me. Now the question is, are these the same quality fans as the fans in the MK7? Because those ones are actually not bad, though you can't completely control the speeds on them. But they're not bad. So we're gonna pop this back panel off with the 2 screws. Set those aside. Pull the panel, which just lifts off, and immediately you have access to your documentation, which is included with the case, on how to operate the case, which is nice. I think people are going to start using QR codes more often, and just put a piece of paper on the box so you can get your manual that way online. I'm starting to see that a lot. So it's just cheaper. Alright, here's the back side. You got all your wiring already routed down the main, I guess you can call it, harness here, and it's pretty neat. Right out of the box. Saves you a ton of time. So looks like we got on the top, we have a dust filter here at the top, which is magnetic, although this one is kind of bubbled up a little bit, so it's kind of, probably would take some weight to flatten that out. You might have to play with it later, see if we can get that out. But you got a power button, you got a reset button, or I'm sorry, you have a power button, you have the option of a reset button or an LED, which is connected to this addressable RGB controller. So you can see the reset switch down here. Gotta move the wire out of the way, but you should be able to see this is the reset switch, which is actually controlling the RGB. So you have the option to use addressable RGB on the motherboard using software, or you can use the button to control the RGB. In this build, I don't have an addressable RGB header on this motherboard. So there's no 5-volt 3-pin header on this board, so we're going to be using the controller. We'll see how it works. Again, it's a budget build. I hate doing that. Not something I normally do, but it's all for the budget. Normally I like to have everything software controlled and fancy. Alright, so we're gonna get this back panel added here. for the I/O shield. Real quick. I feel like no matter how good you are at building computers, you always struggle to get this I/O shield in. I'm liking how most of the newer motherboards are coming with these I/O shields attached to the motherboard now, which makes it a little bit easier until something doesn't line up right away correctly. Yeah, I'm struggling with this one. It's definitely a used I/O shield from Gigabyte. There we go. It was definitely used. So we got that in. Now, bag of screws that came with the case. We're gonna have to find a couple of studs because this is a micro ATX motherboard, and the case is pre-studded for a full ATX motherboard. So we've got two to add. This one right here. If you look at your motherboard, just place it in here. Try to map out where you need to put the studs or add the studs. Make sure you do that before you put the board in and start screwing it down, because I mean, one, you want to make sure it's correct, and you want all the studs where they're supposed to be. You don't want any studs touching the bottom of the board where it shouldn't be, because it can actually cause some grounding issues, and you can have a motherboard that won't power on, or will power on and act funny. So studs are important, and don't leave them in there underneath the board if they don't belong there. So we got the board mounted or set, and we're going to start screwing it in. These are some fine threaded screws that we're going to be using for the motherboard, which is pretty much the same for any case you're using. Very fine thread. I think NZXT uses a slightly different screw, but that's pretty much all I've ever ran into who decided to be different. Everybody else is pretty universal. Most micro ATX motherboards have about 6 screws. Sometimes they'll have less. ITX motherboards are less. One thing I didn't account for. Before I put the board in, I should have popped these back slots out for the video card. So don't make that mistake. Thankfully it's risen high enough that it's not touching the board. So I'm going to be able to pop these out without pulling the board back out. Those are those case pop outs, or slot fillers, whatever you want to call them. But they are sometimes a pain in some cases, so always check that. Don't do what I just did, because I'm special. Alright, let's get get the front panel stuff, front panel power button, USB, all that jazz. Let's get that connected. This one doesn't have a lot actually. It has a USB 3, two USB 3 ports, a audio, and your regular power switch LEDs. Nothing too fancy. So I've got a little bit of a trick here. If you're building in a micro ATX, or building with a micro ATX motherboard in an ATX case, and you don't want to see the cables at the bottom, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So there's no slots or cutouts here on the case, so I'd have to go from this slot or from the bottom slot here, down here, and then you'd see all these wires hanging here and running across. If you don't want to do that, you can actually run it behind the motherboard like this, and then they'll be able to just go right to their ports, and then you pull them tight from the back side. I did that just by simply running it here down between the board and the case. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get this USB 3 in there though. It's going to be too tight. And it's alright because usually you have a bend on it, so it's not going to look too awkward. So I'm just going to run it on that one, and it will look just fine. This is our HD audio. And then our power switch. If you don't know which pins are what, you can look those up in your motherboard manual, and it will tell you. But I've built on this board so many times in my life, and it's pretty much the same for any build or any board. It's pretty much a universal language that I know which pins are which. So, but if you don't know yours that you're building in, just pull out your motherboard manual and look it up. It will show you. Usually it's labeled like JF, JFP, or front panel, or something along those lines. Pretty easy to identify. Alright, so we got our front power switch, our hard drive LEDs, and our power LEDs, along with our HD audio. Now we're going to do the USB 3.0, and this can only go on one way. We've got a slot and a slot on the actual cord. So I'm going to twist it so that the cord is not bending automatically up into the graphics card fan. I'm going to bend it so that it's going down, or try to here. The best I can. There we go, it doesn't look terrible. Alright, and then I need some SATA cables. That's the other thing. They didn't send me SATA cables. So, I have some here. I actually have like a million. So if you ever need SATA cables, I got some. And then we're going to put it in SATA 0. Which is going to be this one down here. And we're going to run it through this cutout here. This is going to be for that SSD that we're going to be using. I mean, the majority of the build's already done. This is a very quick, very easy build. So, anybody looking to do an easy build, this is your build. Actually, I'm just going to tackle the graphics card right now. The graphics card is used. It's a used GTX Gigabyte 1060. But I mean, it's a Gigabyte card on a Gigabyte motherboard, so it'll blend well with the parts. And I mean, budget, can't find a 6 gigabyte card under $250 anywhere, so I'll take it. And it's not going to be, you know, it is a little bit older, but it will play any game you throw at it pretty much in 1080p, relatively with a decent FPS, so you're not stuttering across the map. So it'll give you a really good gaming experience for the buck. So it's probably your best bang for the buck right now. It's like a 1060 GTX, any 4 gig card really. At that point, you could get decently right now still, because 4 gig for miners just doesn't produce what 6 to 8 gigs produces on a mining rig. So if you're looking for a video card and you need one, look for 4 gigs, you'll find something. Alright, let's get this solid state drive mounted here. We're going to mount it on the back. We have the option to mount it on the front, but I'm just going to mount it on the back here. Keep it hidden out of the way. So yeah, if anybody's wondering, like, what do you do at night? If you're ever wondering, this is what I do. People think, you know, computers are just magic. You just get built and voila, they're magic. Actually, I spend my day working, and then I spend my evening building. And I'll also spend some of my time in between that responding to emails, following up on estimates, tracking down parts, logistics, breaking down boxes. It's a lot of work. Just never ends. Keeps on going. So, if anybody's interested in doing any of this, it's not as easy as you think it would be. And then your garbage men start questioning what's happening in the house, and your neighbors look around in the window and see a bunch of computers running, and they're like, is that guy hacking the government, or what's going on over there? So I'm just putting the solid state screws into the side here, so it's mounted to the bracket, and then the bracket's going to just slide right in here, and then we're going to screw it right down into the case. And then we have one SSD ready to go. Gonna have to put those GPU screws in. But in the meantime, I'm just gonna get this plugged in and get the power supply put in. Oh, I actually forgot I have a Wi-Fi adapter I have to add. Whoopsie. That's what happens when you build it like 2 in the morning. Power supply, we're going with a brand that you've seen me use a few times now. but I went with a 500 watt 80 plus bronze for this build. So 500 watt 80 plus bronze. It is not modular. It's got a very quality feel to it though. I've used it a few times, never had a problem, and I'm beginning to fall in love with this brand. You can usually find these on Amazon. This one, I think I got, because I buy bulk, I think I got this for about $38. Can't say anything bad about this brand so far. Packaging is awesome. The product itself is awesome. The one time I had a bad one, it was damaged via shipping. So it was just bent to shit. And that wasn't, in the box was just totally destroyed too. So it was not the product's fault at all. It was the shipper. So cannot fault this brand for that. And they're quick to get me another one. So far great support, great quality product, great reviews. They're just tearing it up in the power supply world. And right now power supplies are going up in price because of the whole crypto mining stuff, even though Bitcoin's crashed, or started to, because of Elon Musk. I think it was like a $8,000 tank yesterday. I was watching it. Right now I'm just getting this power supply screwed in here, and then I'll flip it back over so you have a better view other than my hand. Okay. I'm going to run this probably on the outside of this whole harness. Right up here. And then do the same for the CPU on the other side. If I can find it. Trying to organize these cables. I will still do a good job, at least, maintaining cable management quality. And then our graphics card PCI power is going to just slide up through here in this bottom slot. And then we have two connections on the back, which are SATA power. So I'm going to use one here for the SSD. Make sure I'm plugging it in right. Happens when you're building at 2 a.m., you know? Weird things will happen. And SATA connection for your power to your, actually I'm just going to put it on this string, but SATA to your fan hub, RGB hub, for this particular case. And then I'm going to probably clean this up a little bit, but for the most part, these cables are just going to get tucked in here. It's not a very bad thing to do. And we'll clean this up after we get the power connections plugged in on the other side. video card, which is 3-pin. I'm sorry, 6-pin. I'll tuck this here, like that. Get this out of the way. Alright, and then our 24-pin for our motherboard. It's going to just plug in right here like that. Tuck that in. This is driving me nuts. I'm going to have to zip tie that. And then our 8-pin for our CPU at the top left corner of the motherboard, if I would plug it in right. Just like, why am I lacking light? There we go. Forgot to turn that bad boy on. And I'm feeding this other attachment through so it's not sticking out there. Alright, I'm going to do a couple of zip ties here real quick on this side, then we'll flip it over, clean up the zip ties on the back, I'm sorry, the wiring on the back, the wire management. And I gotta do this wireless PCIe card real quick, because I forgot to do that. Whoops. Building at 2 a.m. Sometimes you forget things. This one's a little bit tight. Hard to do with the graphics card already in there. Come on. There we go. We went with TP-Link AX3000, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.0, so it's AX200 Intel chip is what's going to be running the Wi-Fi. So you're going to get some really good download speeds on Wi-Fi. You know, and this build is kind of with the mindset that somebody's going to come in and try to get into PC gaming, either replacing a console or maybe for a younger kid. So most likely they won't, when you're building in this budget and selling, most likely they won't have a dedicated wired connection for their computer. So I always like to go with a Wi-Fi card if the motherboard doesn't have it already. But I do target those mostly, motherboards with Wi-Fi in them, because these are like 40 bucks. So if you think about it, you know, your motherboard, let's say you go with the non-Wi-Fi version, you're saving yourself maybe $40. Why not just put it on the board and save yourself the hassle? Because it's going to be the same product. But I don't get anything less than AX200 now, because I don't want people to have a bad experience. But 9 times out of 10, people are coming to buy a computer, and you know, we live in a Wi-Fi world, so they automatically assume a PC has Wi-Fi built into it. I don't know how many times this happened to me, where I had a customer come back, does this actually have Wi-Fi? And I'm like, no, it's a gaming computer, and it does not have Wi-Fi listed on it, sorry. And then I have to direct them to go buy a USB adapter. So instead of getting that headache and dealing with it on both ends, but you know, theirs and mine, I just make sure the PCs have Wi-Fi and they have Bluetooth. So I mean, this is 2021. I feel like that is not a bad move. I feel like it's a good move. One thing I forgot to do here, I'm all sorts of messed up tonight. So we're going to be powering the Bluetooth with a TP-Link USB plug. Yeah, got it. And then I'm just going to kind of feed this under the board cord here to hide it best I can. And plug it into the USB header here on the board. Maybe. There we are. And then continue to try to tuck these wires in here and keep it clean looking. I like clean. Okay, so now that we got our Wi-Fi adapter plugged in, when we probably should have done that earlier, we're going to go ahead and finish up this wire cleanup. Fire this bad boy up. Told you it's going to be a quick build. Some of my larger builds will go for 4+ hours. This one is nice and easy. I'm going to just leave these wires here. I'm going to put a zip tie on them to make them look less disorganized. And I think I'm going to put a zip tie down here on this USB 3 cable in the SATA because I just want it, I don't want it to hit the fan. Hey. Hey, kiddo. Good evening.
It's playtime.
Oh, it's playtime, guys. Is it playtime? It's 2 a.m. I thought it was build time. Playtime, build time. It's close enough. That's baby Chloe. If you haven't met her yet. She's new to this world as of a couple weeks. Almost a couple weeks. And she's also completely backwards. Night is day and day is night. Might be why I'm building at night right now. Alright, so we've got everything plugged in on the front side. We've got everything kind of buttoned down and tightened up, so I'm not worried about pulling things and, you know, kind of ruining the front side. So we are ready to go and get this tightened up and fire this bad boy up. I'm going to try to keep the cables away from the holes so that they're not sitting there and you can see, so it's not just ugly sitting there in front of the cable, you know, in front of the holes, so you can see the cables on the other side of the case. Does that make sense? I don't know. I think it does. Maybe. So I'm going to undo this thing causing pain and just kind of rework them a little bit over. I'm not a fan of that. Cables showing on the other side. When you go through all the hassle to try to hide them. Why? Why do that? Okay. Plenty of cable length on these fans. Holy smokes. That is an understatement. Okay, I made a oopsie. I should have done that here. But it's okay. We're just going to use another zip tie because they're cheap. They're cheap. And you get free ones with the case, which is cool. But I'm using some bigger ones for the larger harness here. Just kind of work the cables a little bit until you get it where you want it, and then zip tie it down, make sure it's clean. That's really the goal here. Clean, clean, clean. Or at least as close to clean as possible. I don't need anything super fancy. But even though it's a budget build, you still want organization to a certain point. Seems like everybody's awake right now. Mr. Max, my pup, is down here at my feet. Trying to figure out what's going on. Normally I have the whole house to myself at this hour, which is nice. Sometimes. So we're just running this, or zip tying this cable down here for the CPU power. Clean, keep it neat. Yeah, the case has a lot of tie down options, so you can tie quite a few things down. Very nice and neat, very clean. It's got a pretty decent sized gap between the back panel and back here, so you got plenty of space to run run cables and not worry about the height. Put some drives back here, maybe some fan hubs. But yeah, you'll definitely be able to, you have plenty of space back here to work with. That is for sure. I probably overdid it on the zip ties. I know. Can't help myself. Alright. Now that it's all cleaned up, I'm just going to go ahead and snip these. Again, don't do this blindfolded because once you snip, you ain't going back. So pay attention to what you are snipping. That's all of them, I believe. Let's get this panel back on. Fire this bad boy up. See if Gigabyte did me wrong. They probably did. Not a big fan of Gigabyte support. Not a big fan. Front mesh, if I didn't show it to you earlier, it's got a little bit of styrofoam in it to clean it out, but front mesh looks cool. Door hinge is a little bit tricky to do on its side like this, so I would recommend standing it up. Just makes it a little easier to line up. if you have to put it back on. Which, if you're building with it, I would recommend taking it off so it doesn't get in the way. Or so you don't lay it on the glass. But I got it. So there we have it. We have a build already done. That was quick. So now I'm going to go ahead and get this plugged in here real quick and fire this bad boy up for you so y'all can checks it out. Unless, of course, Gigabyte did me wrong. And there we have it. So these are addressable RGB fans, and right now I've got it on the button on the top, the reset button. So I'm going to cycle through it, let you guys see the different modes. It looks like there's a static mode and then there's a breathing mode, which this is the breathing mode. And then you have an RGB mode. And actually we're going into a bunch of different modes here, which is kind of cool. Nice. And this is your RGB disco party in a box mode. That's what the front looks like. Not bad. Not bad. Top, you can see through, see the fans, nice and easy. So for the price, I think it was about $80 for, you know, 6 fans, addressable RGB, which you can connect to a motherboard if you wanted to do software control on these, which is a 3-pin 5-volt connection on your motherboard. So it doesn't, it's not a bad deal for the case. It's a decent budget case. If you're not planning to go, you know, custom water cooling, I would probably refrain from putting a AIO in here unless your video card is going to be short. And if you do an AIO, I would do the front and plan to have the fans on the front. I don't think you could do push-pull, where you have 3 fans on the front, 3 fans on the back of the radiator. But you should definitely be able to fit a 360mm AIO in here, just with caution of the size of video card that you have in here. And I mean, for the price, you get a mesh front, so you got plenty of airflow. Fans are pushing some decent air here. I think it's a pretty good option for a budget case with our addressable RGB fans that aren't half bad. So I like it. I think they come in white as well. They have a white option and a black option, which we're using black. So check it out, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the quick budget build stream. Let me know if you have any questions. Shoot me a chat. Share the links. Share my page. Share whatever you could get your hands on. Share it, because that's what keeps this circle going round. All right, guys. Have a good night. I pop some music on, leave this on for a little bit, and yeah, I'll catch you guys later. Have a good night. Oh, and last thing, I do have 3 more builds to do this week. I got an RTX 2060 build. Again, video cards are just really hard to come by, so building with what I got, scratching at the bottom of the barrel. Have a good night, guys. Stick around for the next stream later maybe this weekend.
you.